This magnificent picture illustrates the world at the point when the pagan gods were destroyed. It is painted by Nigel Frith, and it is part of his history of the world. Am I right, Nigel?
You're quite correct, yes, yes. When I painted it, I didn't know I was going to end up trying to encapsulate the history of the whole world, but that was what I was aiming for when I did it. Yes, you see, it's got a fawn and a maenad. You can see he's a fawn. He's got little long ears, rather like Dr. Spock. And they're walking through beautiful landscape, sort of Greece, but they are lost, and they have looks of anguish on their faces. And the reason is, over in the left hand, your right hand corner, you can see that the Greek gods, who were their main gods, these are just demigods, they have been destroyed and banished from the earth by the Christian angels, who made sure that Christianity took over. In 393 AD, the Emperor Theodosius banned all pagan worship, and all the temples were closed down, and so the gods were gone. And you can see the detritus of the god Bacchus in your right hand corner. There's his leopard skin, and there's his what's called a thyrsus, the spear he had, and it's broken.
Well, this gives us an idea of the kind of detail you've gone into in the work which you call Pangaea.
Yes, indeed, indeed. I came to that name and the process because of the epics that I was writing. One of these interviews is about my epics, which I published in the 70s and 80s, Krishna, and then Asgard, about the Indian gods and the Norse gods. And then I knew I wanted to tackle the Christian gods, and I wondered what there was to tell about them. The Greek gods, and what there was to tell about them. And so it all happened when I was on holiday in Rome, 1976, and it was hot summer evening, looking out over the Forum from the road. There was the traffic roaring behind me, and we were looking down at the beautiful Forum, ruins of the Roman city, and the trees growing all over it, and looking very beautiful. And this is just the thing that happened to Gibbon. You know, he looked at the ruins of Rome and thought, what happened? You know, and he must tell the story, and that was the origin of his decline and fall of the Roman Empire. And I was, my mind was full of making epics of the gods, as I published 2 epics by them. And I thought, okay, so these Zeus, Venus, there was a temple of Venus, you know, temple of Zeus, capital I. What happened to them after the Christians came in and they were banished? Did they disappear? And this set me off to find out what happened to them in history. And that led me to the idea it got me to kind of understand the big historical process,
Yes.
which looking at history century by century, you don't get.
Well, perhaps I could read you what one might crudely call the blurb to the Pangaea, which neatly summarises, I think, what you're saying. An outline of the world history according to the Homeric method, where the dynamics of history are represented by the actions of the gods. By identifying the gods with the chief forces of history entire, he discovered the hidden chivalry that the powers of the world possess. Your words, not mine, okay?
I was going to say
No wonder you find them so admirable.
Yes, that was it, you see. So by having absorbed the Homeric method and started to think in that way and tried to analyse what was happening to the gods, I found that I had discovered really a kind of algebra an algebra for analysing not just little bits of history, but the whole of history, East and West, you see. And this was how I came to my concept of Pangaea, and allowed me to get a full picture of what happened in the whole of history, which I have actually embodied in a special machine, which I have over here in the corner.
Well, that's something we might look at in detail. I just want to mention that I have read histories of the world before, particularly History of the World by...
Probably read more of them than I have.
History of the World by H.G. Wells, which
indeed.
was, a first.
Yes. Big.
And more recently, the book Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, which was a bestseller about 5 years ago.
I haven't caught up
so
with that yet.
It's interesting to see how your interpretation is really quite unique.
Yes, it's got to be unique because I've taken it from a Homeric mindset, which, as we discussed, you acquire if you spend 11 years trying to write the epic. It gives you this insight from the top level, as in Homer. The events happen to the men and women in Homer, in the war, in the Iliad, and in Voyages, and in the Odyssey. But the gods are there looking at it, and they are beyond it, and yet very concerned with it. And so, if you get up to the level of the gods, you can see that Odysseus will die, and Troy will fall, and the Roman Empire will build up. But these gods are still the same lot. It's the same cast as you had in the big long-running series, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Same cast are in that. But then Christianity, and they're gone. What happened to them? That's where the machine comes in.
It makes us feel rather that we're simply puppets being pulled on strings by these ethereal beings. Is that a reasonable feeling to have?
No, because if you have a polytheist system, you see, as the Greek gods had, the Greeks had, you wouldn't feel a puppet, because you would. Whose puppet were you? Were you Zeus's puppet, or Athena's puppet, or Apollo's puppet? And each one of them might be pulling you in a different direction from their rivals. Apollo and Athena were rivals in the Trojan War. So it's up to you to go with that one or that one. It just exposes you. You see what the processes are, the dynamics and the directions you could take, and it's up to you to take them. So you're not really a puppet. You're perhaps less of a puppet.
Well, maybe as Shakespeare put it, we are like flies to the gods.
Yeah, but that's a rather gloomy picture.
Yes.
And that's a Western picture.
Yes.
Which, are we ready to go to the...
Well, I just want to restrain you with one further quote from Erich Fromm.
Erich Fromm?
For the psychologist, psychoanalyst.
Yeah, that's it. I was reading.
And he relates this to a more mental sphere. Man, created in God's likeness, shares God's qualities. He emerges from nature and strives to be fully born, to be fully awake. This process reached a further stage in the middle of the first millennium in China, with Confucius and Lao Tse, in India with Buddha, in Greece with the philosophers of the Greek Enlightenment, and in Palestine with the biblical prophets, and then a new peak with Christianity and Stoicism within the Roman Empire, with Quetzalcoatl in Mexico, and another half millennium later with Muhammad in Africa. Our Western culture is built on two foundations, the Jewish and the Greek cultures.
Yeah.
How does this fit with your scheme, which let us by all means now visit?
No, Yes, I've read that bit. I haven't read the last bit though, but that was good. Yes, because as he says, he's showing you Western culture. You see, and what you discover if you use this Homeric method is that it's not just Western culture. Although the modern world comes from Western culture, I certainly agree with that. But in what way was the Western culture drawing things from the East that haven't been really noticed before?
Right.
But you see, as you were reading that, I was thinking, well, yeah, you see, this as I told you before, but it's the 4,000 years. If you count up, there's 4 levels, and there are 4 columns. The columns represent the Western world, the Middle Eastern world, India, China, and the 4 levels represent 2000 BC, 1000 AD, 2000 AD. So we're just here at the top. But as you were reading that out, I was thinking, yes, well, you see, you've mentioned, I forget what you started with, but
China.
yeah, well, China's over there, but I haven't got a little symbol for that until late, and there's a reason for that. But you said Buddhism, you see, so Buddhism's over here in India, and that's the Buddhist wheel, because Buddha we can see setting off the age of faith, of having a doctrine and teaching a way of getting salvation. Whereas you mentioned the Greeks developing science and philosophy. Here's the Greeks over here. But as we've seen, they get overthrown by when the Christians come along. So there's no Greeks in that little square. But just to kind of really summarise it, to finish off with, the thing which people overlook is right down here on the ground, and I've put it so that it's in fact before 2000 BC, and it's all these symbols I taken from Mesopotamian sculpture and buildings, and that's a sort of 3 symbol, and I've taken that to be the symbol of Shiva, who had a 3-point spear, the Trisula, and so that symbolises yoga, but it's placed before 2000 BC, and the reason is that I think that there is evidence that yoga, the system of yoga, existed in 2000 BC. The evidence for it is a tiny little seal, and it's down the road there in the Indian bit of the Ashmolean Museum. It's a chap sitting in the yoga posture, just a chap, and I think shows you that yoga is that early. But it's in the Indian tradition, you see, and Buddha just took that system and developed a way of proselytizing it and getting people to join up, because he would send a sort of army of monks around to get people to move towards salvation. In the old days, the yoga system was you would only get it if you went and asked a guru for it. But Buddha started this preaching, and I think all the faith movements come from Buddha. That's why I put Buddha there and not Christianity and Islam, because I think that was the faith impulse that is this level here. This is the world of faith. But then other worlds happen, and it's there's not time to tell you, but what you end up with is here, where I've put these, here you can see there are water symbols coming out of the sides, which is again from Mesopotamia, means kind of flourishing, coming up from the underworld. And so that means a kind of renaissance. There was an Indian renaissance of Buddhism after, Indian renaissance of yoga after Buddhism. And Buddhism died out in India. That's the strange thing. India invented it. There are no, Buddhism didn't survive all the way through. But there was a renaissance of Hinduism, or yoga, in 800. But in the West, there was a renaissance of this Greek and Roman world that produced a return to Greek science, and then the modern world, which swept across the world, but was greatly enhanced by the practicality of the Chinese, the basics that China supplied of technology, printing, silk, gunpowder, all these sort of things, as well as the system of bureaucracy and competitive examinations, which the British took from them, the Americans took from the British around 1810, and became the kind of sort of free system of university education that we now have.
Now the Chinese are again supreme,
And
it seems.
yes, but you see, they've deserted their old Confucian system of Mandarin education, and they don't have it now.
No.
In the old days, anybody who could read and write could go up to the capital, Chang'an, and take this examination, and then go into the bureaucracy that ran China. Nowadays, they don't have that. You're not taught that. You just got to prove you're a mono-minded communist, and then you start getting jobs.
Yes.
That's why they will not win.
I see. Talking of winning and losing, and referring again to the piece I read of what you had written some time back about Pangaea, and bearing in mind the recent events following the European Cup football,
Very epic.
I refer again to your line, he discovered the hidden chivalry that powers the world.
Exactly.
I thought there was a certain want of it
In the World Cup.
on evidence. Well, certainly if the aftermath.
The reactions to it, yeah.
So
there was
it showed rather
but there was
man at his worst, I would have thought.
yeah, but there was chivalry in our team, you see, and obviously in the Italians a little bit more than we had, and their something deserted them of their chivalry in the second half, alas.
No, I was thinking more of the aftermath.
The aftermath of the public reaction.
Yes,
yeah,
all right.
yeah.
And the visions of Wembley as
Yes.
the maddened hordes
Exactly. That's why
streamed out.
Well, you see, everybody's sort of been saying, haven't they, that Gareth Southgate has trained his team to be kind of more gentlemanly and not to be over the top. And didn't he wear waistcoats too?
He did.
He did. You see, he picked that up from me, and so he's brought chivalry to his team, and it has been remarkably successful. But it just needs that extra edge to take us through to win the World Cup next year.
Just finally, how long will we have to wait for this history to be published, do you think?
Not long. You have read bits of it, or the start of it.
Yes.
Because you and Will thought it was okay, I have really gone for that and expanded it. But I am now just completing about a 20-page synopsis of the whole thing. The whole thing's worked out. We know who did the murder and who's the villain, and it all works out in the end, and revelations along the way. So that could be read as a story in itself, but I don't want people to read that because it's like reading the detective story end before you've even done chapter 1. So.
Well, we very much look forward to reading it, Nigel.
Well, hopefully we'll put it on the website, and then
the whole world can read it.
Yes, just help yourself.
And understand in one gulp the meaning of life.
Yes, the website being called thefritharchive.com.
Thank you.
Run by William Mann.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.